What's up, gamers? This is the first video in a series of guides on Loomian Legacy PvP. This series is going to go over the fundamentals of the game, and as anyone who's familiar with Pokemon knows, most of these are going to translate one-to-one from Pokemon, so if you watch Pinkacross guides or any other YouTuber who plays Smogon tiers, everything you learn from that is going to translate directly to Loomian Legacy. Myself, I'm a Pokemon player mainly, but I came back to this game when rank dropped in Season 0. I had not played since 2020 when Sephirite City just dropped, so I had no idea what was good. I didn't know what any of the guys did, didn't know what teams were viable, I didn't even know what items were out by now. To put it in perspective, the tournament-winning team that was the big cheese when I quit playing was a Wiki stall team. That's what won the EAT tournament when I dipped, and the main defensive core back then was like Obsidragon, Stratosaur, Mobblemerc, while the main offensive core involved like mixed attack Zulong and whatever physical guy like Garbantis or whatever. So even though I was coming back to a totally new game in Season 0, though, I still managed to hit my season goal, which was top 25, and I did that just by applying basic fundamentals of Pokemon to a new metagame that I didn't really understand, but I learned it on the ladder the hard way. And I'm going to, throughout this series, share those fundamentals with you that will make it pretty easy to climb. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll be a lot better. You'll understand the game in ways that you didn't before, and you'll understand concepts that maybe you didn't even know existed. Originally, this series started because I thought I would make some Pokemon guides, but reality is there are a lot of better channels who do everything that I could really think of doing for Pokemon, like Pinkacross and, you know, everybody really. But there aren't very many good Loomian Legacy guides. All the Loomian Legacy guides out there are for specific metas or for, like, things that just aren't going to translate into enough situations for me to kind of look at them and think that they're great. I'll see a lot of, like, Loomian showcase videos, maybe some talk about the current meta, like why a particular thing is so prominent on ladder or in tournaments at the moment. But I don't see stuff on how to, like, play the game and really understand the game. So yeah, in this series you're going to learn how Loomians synergize with each other, why they do that, how to build teams around synergies, how to identify matchups at team preview, how to survive the bad matchups and exploit good matchups, how to build a team with a flat or an extreme matchup distribution depending on what you're going for, and how to play the game when you're ahead or when you're behind, and how to identify that game state in the first place. In this first intro episode, we're going to start by understanding basic team structures and archetypes. Year 1 Season 3 just started, which is pretty exciting. It's why I'm back. I'm going to get one of these to try to fill out the trainer card. I didn't bother playing in Year 1 Season 1 because a lot of the players I wanted to fight stopped playing. I wasn't going to match the great Pokemon players like LSU and Ruan and stuff anymore, so but our goal this season is going to be another top 25, which I think will be quite easy. I think it'll be a lot easier than it was in Season 0 since the really strong players are taking a break right now. So I'm going to build us some teams using the Dream Teams feature to show the process of creating a viable team, how we identify what the team needs, what teams need generally, and stuff like that. I want to make team building as simple as possible for you to understand, so let's start by looking at team structure in terms of cores, identifying pairs or triplets of Loomians with synergies that make them effective on a team together. We're going to be building and looking at teams which fall under what's called the balance umbrella. Teams under the balance umbrella include, from order of most defensive to least defensive or most offensive, semi-stall, bulky balance, bulky offense, and offense teams. We're omitting both extremes of the spectrum because stall and hyper offense tend to break a lot of team building rules, but these archetypes are going to have dedicated videos later on in this series of guides. Teams under the balance umbrella typically have an offensive core or a breaking core with a defensive core and 1 or 2 utility Loomians who serve roles that these cores need to function well. Some teams might prefer hazard stacking, while others might need hazards not as much, but those teams will probably at least want the ability to remove them. So to start understanding team cores, let's rebuild the team that I used in Season 0 in Dream Teams. Okay, so first off, we're starting with the Season 0 breaking core that I had my team structured around. I already put these sets in here. This is in nonsense because, of course, Ikazune can no longer use Flash and Flee. Borak also had its energy reduced quite a bit. The team's changed. But this Season 0 team is going to be a perfect example because, again, it's right in the center of the Balance Umbrella kind of spectrum, and the logic behind it is quite straightforward. So to start, we have a fast pivot. 94 base speed, nimble, boots, very high base ranged attack, 2 pivot moves, so it can only be stopped by earth ground types like Beneki and Soulburst Gastroke. It can also be blocked by Obelisk if it's running Seas. But anyway, we have a dual stab that's quite powerful into a lot of meta picks, so Lashent, Luminami, Sukami, a lot of things get hit for super effective by this. And on top of that, things that would come into wall this, like Eliguana for example, are under immediate threat by something like a Borak. So we have a fast pivot, and then we have a very strong, very high immediate power Zacian pig form with boast and specialty gloves to more than double its damage just for coming in. The Borak set that I ran had Stab Earthquake, Mega Chomp, Rogue Assault, and Priority, a priority move that is boosted quite a bit by this +1 specialty gloves. And this is really the kind of basic breaking core structure that you want to have when building a team, especially if you're starting out. This is the easiest to build around. You want a fast kind of cleaner with decent coverage and a pivot option, or 2 in this case. And you want something with a lot of immediate power, something that is on the other attacking side. So we have a strong ranged attacker, we have an extremely strong melee attacker. This facilitates entries for Borak, and the things that can come in to kind of shut down Borak, a lot of them are hindered by the presence of this thing. So the next question that we ask once we have the breaking core is what kind of support do we need for this core? We need a defensive core that's going to help these two break teams. So when we look at Ikabor, they're both extremely weak to water. 4 times weak to water will be OHKO'd by any water attack. Weak enough to water that it can't really take a water attack. So why don't we add a Luminami? Something that resists water. It has light type, which is going to prevent Fade Away from pivoting on us. And Luminami is just one of the easiest things to keep healthy, and the reason for that is it has Power Napper. Makes it very easy to keep it healthy, move it around the field without taking too much damage. And yeah, so the set that I used was Flash and Flee, Tsunami, Frost. Actually, it was Maroon, but if I wanted to adapt this for the current season, it would be Tsunami. The reason Maroon was good was that it would break energy thresholds on things that got hit by it. And then the last move was Rejuve. We're going to hold off on putting an item on this thing until we see how the rest of this defensive core kind of shakes out, and then we can distribute items as they're needed. Borak is going to kind of obviously be the offensive MVP of this team. We already have 1 pivot, so we might as well make another pivot in this defensive core. And the best candidate for that in Season 0 that paired really well with Luminami was Lashent. This team, you can already kind of tell where it's going. It's going to be extremely, extremely obnoxious to fight, and we're going to quickly make the obvious set. I think this Luminami might have been a little bit different on this side of things. I think it might have been 20 and 80, actually. But anyway, the set that I used for this, the important thing was that it had Fade Away. It no longer has Fade Away. That's why we're here in this nonsense thing. Fade Away, Slap Down, of course, had Rejuve, and then the last move was actually Thistle Slash. Ideally, because our Breaking Core uses Borok, who can vaporize teams if it gets free entry, we want a pivot-oriented defensive core. So here's Luminami, and here's Lashent. Lashent helps with the ranged bulk. This Luminami is full melee defense. This Lashent, through its ability Petrifying, is going to make it a lot easier to wall ranged attackers. On top of that, Lashent's 4 times weakness to fire is mitigated by Luminami's 4 times resistance to fire and Ikazun's ability in Raging Fire. Alternatively, you could run its secret ability. I didn't have access to one, so this is what I used. Importantly, in this core, we have immunity to 2 pivot moves already in this defensive core. We have Light blocking Fade Away, and we have Plant, which blocks Flash and Flee. On top of that, Borok, through Earth type, is going to block Zip Zap, and Ikazun, if you choose its secret ability, can also block Zip Zap. So anyway, this team already can block 3 of the most common pivot moves in the game, but we aren't done with our defensive core yet. So Lumishent, as powerful as it is, has a pretty severe weakness to Toxic. On top of that, strong, dark, and brawler breakers like Halvantic and Wrestlin can deal with Lumishent pretty easily. So we're going to need something that can resist these types, and ideally offer another pivot to enter our Borok. It's pretty obvious where this is going. There isn't really any better option than Ursnack. This is what I used. And the crucial move here is Baffle. We also now know what the item distribution is going to look like because we have an Ursnack that's going to require our health amulet. Because unfortunately it doesn't have any natural recovery other than that. We can give Lashent a Milkshake here. And just to further strengthen our resistance to Dark and our ability to counter Dark, we're going to give Luminami a Shade Pearl. This has a niche use as well in baiting Gloves Vesperatu to put a slapdown into us, which will then be OHKO'd by Flash and Flee, which is 4 times super effective. So not only does this Ursnack pretty clearly help our defensive core mitigate their weaknesses by resisting poison, giving a brawler immunity, resisting dark. It has a 4 times weakness to Spirit, which is resisted by Lashent and blocked entirely by Luminami. But also, it facilitates entry for our MVP of the team, our killer, and it facilitates entry for Ikazun if that's ever useful as well. It can be especially useful if you're baffling a boots user and then you bring Ikazun in and it can outspeed it. But yeah, this is just kind of the perfect 3rd Loomian slot to round out this defensive core. So we figured out our items. We were able to pretty easily give our health amulet to Ursnack. Milkshake allows Lashent to get a free turn off to pivot or slap something without having to recover. The Shade Pearl allows Luminami to take an extra dark attack for a free pivot, or in some cases get some pretty powerful niche uses like immediately winning the game by OHKO'ing the Gloves Vesperatu. So at this point, we have 5 Loomians who complement each other extremely well and can break through the majority of teams quite easily. This is usually the point at which team building becomes the most difficult, as it can be pretty hard to identify what exactly a team like this needs. So let's start by thinking about some of the things that this team might be weak to. So when I first started using this team in Season 0, again, I had no idea what any Loomians really did. I looked at this team. The original version of it, before I changed the sets, was passed to me by Izu, so shout out to Izu. And I reworked it a little bit. I, at some points, replaced one of the Loomians with a Goggles Mewtune for swag. Some of the things that emerged as big threats to this team when I was playing it on ladder early on and I had no idea what was going on was Tamp Obolost, Hypno Spam, which was rampant, Hazard Stack teams with cores like our Golem and Harvest Sect who can pretty effectively wall Borok, and Loomians like Fog Charonics who can 1v1 every member of the team except for a +1 Borok if it managed to come in before fog was set. Going through the list of options to kind of deal with that, Soulburst Stratosaur emerges as the only Loomian who can do everything that this team needs at once. So let's add a Stratosaur here. Give it its Strata Burst, give it its very important secret ability, and the original moveset, which used Perch, it was Magnify, it was Gust, which it unfortunately no longer can learn, and it was Dissonant Chord. It was Smart Nimble, and it was a pretty standard set. I believe I made it quite defensive. I think it was something like, it had Gust, which allows us to remove hazards while potentially sweeping at the same time. Its secret ability in Toxic Filter gives us another resist to something that can devastate Lumishent, not just a resist but an immunity. And its own 4x weakness to electric isn't a big deal when we have Borok who's immune to it, Ikazune who resists it, Lishent who resists it, and Ursnack who also resists it. Stratosaur has a ton of bulk before it Soul Bursts, and when it does Soul Burst, it becomes one of the most powerful sweepers in the game. It basically has a base stat total that is a lot more than this, because it will trade its defenses for offenses, and if you're Soul Bursting it, it probably means you're in the position to sweep anyway. Kind of a broken Loomian, especially in Season 0. Everything that Ichabor can't deal with is Stratosaur fodder, and everything that punishes pivot spam balance, such as Hazard Stack, is managed pretty effectively by Stratosaur. Stratosaur does so many things at the same time, which is referred to as role compression. This is equivalent to something like a Goldango or a Gliscor, and it fits perfectly on this team. So lastly, we need to add one more Loomian. And in Season 0, Hypnotize was quite powerful, and on top of that, we still have a bit of a problem with Soul Burst Gastroke, potentially a problem with Soul Burst Metronet. So why don't we just add this? Let's give it Thunder Summon, we can give it Mysterious Dust, and the reason why I like Mysterious Dust on this is that we can run a pretty fun set in this here, wherever the move that I'm looking for. The perfect number 7 for this team to fill in this last slot is a Thunder Summon Plasmoth. With Mysterious Dust and Teardown, it can be a secondary hazard remover. This is especially useful if Stratosaur is a bad bring into the opponent. It can come in on Poison Barbs, remove them, cleanse itself. It prevents Hypnotize with Thunder Summon. And Pestilence plus Provoke with some recovery allows it to trap in 1v1 some of our potential weaknesses, such as Soul Burst Gastroke and Soul Burst Metronet. Thunderstorm also gives us an immunity to sleep, which was quite useful in Season 0 when people were running things like Hypno Leviatros. It also powers up Ikazune's electric moves, allowing its pivot to chip the opponent better and allowing it to clean better. And it allows Borok to hit air types with Earthquake, which is extremely useful. Also, having a Weather Setter helps our matchup into Fog with Bane of Haste, which was by far the most powerful archetype in Season 0 by a landslide. Thankfully, Soul Burst Icicle is banned. We could run a pivot move on Plasmoth. It gets 3 of them in Zip Zap, Flash and Flee, and Dissipate, but I didn't think I need that many pivots, and importantly, I can double anyway if I want to call out an opponent's switch, meaning that this Plasmoth is a higher skill floor version because it lacks a pivot, but I don't mind this because we get so much utility out of this moveset, and it flattens out our matchup spread, which was really important for me trying to ladder to high ladder for the end of season. I really like that this allows me to beat Hazard Stack if I play well, and I think this is just the best tool for our last slot. Now that we went through the building process of the team that I used for Season 0, which obviously did quite well, we can recap a few key principles of team building for a team that exists under the Balance umbrella. So first, we want a solid breaking core that can make progress against the majority of teams that we face. If we cannot break through common walls and we have no way to make progress against certain team comps, our team needs more power. In a typical balance breaking core, at least one Loomian uses specialty gloves or goggles, and the reason for this is that we want to have enough immediate power that we can break through walls without having to worry about them setting up things like tamp or just giving them a turn to react. So for our breaking core, we usually don't want to use a setup sweeper. Setup sweepers are typically bad choices for balance breaking cores because it's easy to prevent them from making progress if you have something like a Wobelisk, if you have a provoke user, if you have a phaser like our Golem Defense. And on top of that, any defensive Loomian with a pivot move can often pivot on the turn that you set up, and it can offensively check your setup sweeper with something that it has that can threaten it. So I recommend only using setup sweepers when they offer roll compression, like in this team, for example, Soulburst Stratosaur, but I would not recommend using setup sweepers who are trying to break by sweeping if you're playing a balanced team. Quick recap again, our breaking core, we want a fast pivot on one side of the attacking spectrum, and we want immediate power on the other side of the attacking spectrum. The second principle is we need a defensive core that can support our breaking core. In this case, we use Loomian with an Ursnack, but the goal is you want to have defensive Loomians that can cover each other's weaknesses while both melee and ranged attackers. Ideally, they're going to be able to pivot into your breakers as well. Not always, but most of the time. Alternatively, your walls can do things like set hazards. For example, if you want to use a Lumello, not all balance teams need to be pivot spam balance. Anyway, the important point is that they just need to work together. You want to be able to wall melee attacks, you want to be able to wall ranged attacks, and if you can do that, your defensive core is probably okay. Part 3 of this building process, we need to identify what these cores need to make them more effective together. Are you weak to hazards? Does your team need hazards? Do you lose to Rancidor? Do you get swept by Anomaly Dorogo? Do you have no way to make progress against a certain Loomian or a certain set of Loomians? Ask yourself questions like these and figure out what your team is missing and fill the role with the Loomian that synergizes the best with your team. Make sure you can cover the meta Loomians, but don't go off the deep end into extreme anti-meta, or you're probably going to weaken your team against UU Loomians or underrated threats. Loomians that are underused and not super common tend to blow through anti-meta teams, so I always caution against building that way. But now that we know how to build teams, make team cores, kind of work together, let's build a team that can work in the current Year 1 Season 3 meta. Final quick recap, our breaking core, our defensive core, and then Loomians that facilitate the existence and utility and power of those two cores. Okay, so we know how to build a team now. We know how team cores work. We know what they're supposed to do, and we have a kind of general basic understanding of all this stuff. So I'm going to build a team live now. We're going to make a quick team together. I didn't build this in advance, so if it's bad, it's because I'm just whipping it up, but it'll probably be good. Once you get good at team building, you should be able to build a top 100 or even top 25 team just off rip. If your goal is just to get to ace, it's going to be really easy to do it with a team like what I'm about to build. So, thinking back on our Season 0 team, I loved Ikazune. I loved that it could pivot on everything. I loved that it cleaned. I loved that it was fast. Well, this season we have something quite similar. It's called Zulong. Now, with this brute force, we're going to get very powerful dual stab. On top of that, our coverage move in Fire Breath is going to be boosted by 30%. And we have one of the best pivot moves in the game. This basically turns Zip Zap, Flash, and Flee into one move, and it's Baffle, which is quite good. For the item, we are going to give it boots. I know this looks a little bit weird because Zulong is extremely fast, but we're gonna justify it by making it very smart. So with this very smart set, we can outspeed most things still. We have more speed than Zulong, or than Ikazune did. We can see if we make ourselves a nimble Ikazune here. Max out at speed, we have 158. Here we have 169. That's quite good. That means that we can still outspeed things like, I'm trying to think of another boots user. Say we're fighting a Tatab. Tatab has to be nimble to speed tie us, and if it's very brawny boots, it'll get outsped. It's quite good. So this boot set is going to do exactly what Ikazune did, just better. It has more power, it has a more difficult to block pivot, and we'll figure out this TP distribution a little bit later. The reason why I drop its range defense is because the priority moves in this game, most of them are physical, so if we wanted to TP this thing to be able to survive something like a Lightspeed Ray from Soulburst Celesting under certain conditions, we can do that, but let's finish this kind of initial team first and then figure out what we're weak to. So our next step is to think of a strong gloves user. We want something with immediate power. I put it to Tatab here to show that Zulong has the same speed without Nimble that Nimble Tatab has. But Tatab's actually a good option. The 4 ideas that I like a lot to complement Zulong are Behemoth, Tatab, Umbrat, and Borok. Those are 4 that come to mind immediately. Tatab actually makes this a little bit difficult because it offers a lot of roll compression with utility in Poison, in here we have Mudslide, and that is a hazard removal tool now. And then on top of that, we have Wonder Herb somewhere in here, and that gives us quite a bit. So if we need hazard removal, we might end up filling the slot with Tatab over Behemoth. For now, let's actually remove this, and let's go to our defensive core a bit so that we can think about what breaker might complement Zulong. I'm going to give you a core that's quite good and quite popular, and that is Sukamoth. So these two complement each other extremely well. Plasmoth is weak to fighting. Most fighting attacks are melee, and this thing is the ultimate melee tank. I'm going to just kind of guess about a set really quick. I don't actually know how good it will be. Let's give it that much energy. Let's give it that. So we have a Sukami, gonna give it quick recovery. This will allow it to get poisoned, switch out, be fine, get parried, switch out, be fine. This can become our status absorber. It's weak to electric, it's weak to plant. So here's Plasmoth. We're gonna give this thing a heavy shield for sure. And we're going to give this either a health amulet or probably better heavy armor. We need this to be heavy shield because we cannot really deal with Zulong without it, especially the goggles set can be quite obnoxious. This one's actually going to be a pivot Loomian, so we'll do a set like this probably. We'll leave it like this for now. Let's add something else to help with what this core is weak to right now. I'm thinking of adding a Dokumori or an Ursnack. That would help with our weakness to something like a Tatab, for example, which can hit both of these for super effective. We do quite well against most ground attacks. We take it neutral with Plasmoth, neutral with Sukami, and both of them are so extremely oriented towards their side of the defense that it should be quite easy to wall a lot with that. So I'm thinking maybe Dokumori. I like Dokumori because if they throw out a physical move, they get punished extremely hard with Spine Break. We can make this very robust. Sluggish, clumsy, max out its melee defense, max out its health, and then throw the rest into here. For its moveset, Baffle allows us to pivot. This gives us 3 pivot options with a Zulong that's also pivoting. Now we have We have a little bit of a decision to make here. We do really well into electric moves right now. So why don't we add a Tatab? The Hemorrhoth would be cool. I actually don't know what this thing has as far as moves go, but it looks very powerful. Yeah, so we have Timber Thrash, Rogue Assault, Primal Slash, and Earthquake, so that could be a great gloves user. Can also be a bulk up set. Quite good. Let's do something like a Tatab. All that I know about this Tatab is I want it to be very nimble, and let's give it the 2 moves that it always needs in Jungle Jitsu and Timber Thrash. And let's give it some utility. Let's make it probably Mudslide. And let's give it Barter. I think this is quite a good Tatab. Now we have 2 more spots on this team. So far we have a Breaking Core in Zulong and Tatab. I'm a little hesitant to run with Tatab because we only have Plant Brawler. It would be nice to have a little bit more physical damage output. I suppose we have this Body Crash though, which coming off of a Tsukame is going to be actually extremely powerful. And we do have this Tokumori here to do something as well, so this might be alright. We have our offensive core, our breaking core, and we have our defensive core, and it looks pretty alright. We have a lot of key resistances, we have a few weaknesses, but nothing that looks terrible just yet, and now we need to think about what else we want to add. So I'm thinking I might want to add another Loomian that offers immediate power, and there's not really one better than this. Let's make it smart. Give it its obvious moves. That was the wrong move. Okay, so we have a Cephalops now. We aren't really weak to poison because we have this. We aren't really weak to electric because we have all of these. We do pretty well into fire. And yeah, I suppose now we need one more team slot. And for something like this, I'm thinking maybe we want to make this a more offensive team. I'm going to go with a Gloves Tyrannics here. Or did I say Gloves Tyrannics? I'm going to go with a Magnify Tyrannics here. We can now put our health amulet on something. And let's do Mag, Spectral Burst, Nova Blast, and Frost Beam. We can do 2 things here. We are maybe a little bit soft against ranged attackers. So why don't we actually make this Smart Clever? And let's go for something like this. This team looks pretty good. We have a lot of breaking power between this Brute Force Zulong with boots, great speed control. Specialty Gloves, very nimble to Tatab, is quite good. It hits very hard with Awakening and Gloves. We have Hazard Control. Unfortunately, Icicle Traps are quite good into this team, but we can clear them. We can absorb Poison Barbs with Tokumori, and we also have Barter. Barter Gloves can destroy certain stall teams. More defensive teams can get hindered very bad by that. So that's a good option in our last slot there. We have a great defensive core between this extreme melee wall. We have this great ranged wall. All 3 of these can pivot, by the way. Tokumori, which punishes physical attacks, baffles out, can set traps, has poison ground coverage, that's good. We have Cephalops offering immediate power on the range side of things. It's also just extremely broken right now. This coverage is almost unwallable. It has traps. And then we have a Charonix, which can set up, it can sweep. Reaper makes it quite easy to sweep. It's bulkier on the range side of things, meaning if Stratosaur comes in on your Magnify, you beat it. This team is quite good. It looks weak to a few things, for example Glucadia, but Glucadia is usually choice locked, and it gets outsped by very nimble to Tob anyway, as long as it isn't boots. And this team just looks good. This team can certainly hit top 100, it can probably hit top 25, and if you pilot this well, you will get to ace on probably a 100% win rate or close to it. So there we have it. We don't have an air type for ground immunity, but that's alright. We have bulky breakers and frail breakers. We have 4 pivots to help them enter. The threats like Chienta, Rancidor, Behemoth, Glucadia can hurt us if we're not careful, but I think that most of these threats can be played around by making aggressive doubles and preemptive plays to prevent them from entering the field on their own terms. Of course, once we test this on ladder, we can see what it's weak to. We can adjust the team, maybe to Tob switches. If the Tob goes, we're probably replacing one of these. Maybe Cephalops is changed with something. Maybe Charonix is swapped. But we can absorb every pivot move. We can do quite well into hyper offense. We can do quite well into stall. It looks like our matchup spread is pretty good, and I don't know what we're weak to yet, so I suppose our job then is to test and find that out. So there we have it for our first video in the series on Loomian Legacy PvP, our first guide. I hope that you guys have a good introduction to team building. Our goal today is to have a basic understanding of team compositions and the cores that compose them, how they work, how you build them. Hope you found this helpful. If you did find it helpful, like and sub or whatever to see the coming guides in the future. I think it'll be pretty useful. And yeah, peace. Good luck laddering.